Today, Daddy is going to tell us what is a strategy and what is a plan, and what's the difference between strategy and plan. Daddy, can you tell me what's a strategy?
Can I drink this?
It's upside down. It's a pretending microphone. It's a pretending microphone. So, Daddy, what is a strategy and what is a plan? What's the difference between strategy and plan?
So we have to think of the big frame that holds everything, and that is usually the vision. Now, sometimes people don't know what they want, and then you have to start working into values and what's actually important to that person, so you can figure out what will continue to be important, what you actually want to create, and then the strategy comes into place, right? So there's this bigger picture of what you actually want, like your vision, and then what are the strategies that you can use to get there, or what is the main strategy to get there. Now, a plan is usually sort of a smaller, like a subset. Like you can have multiple plans to accomplish a strategy, right? A strategy is usually a bigger thing. And then even within the plans, you can have something smaller than a plan, which is usually called like a tactic. So what are the tactics? Now, I think one of the problems that people run into is we get like shiny new object syndrome, right? It's like, what are the great new tactics? Like 2018, what is the best tactic out there? You know, like what is the new thing that you can use? And it might be like, oh, get the best, newest phone, or use the newest app, or whatever it is. And I think people get distracted by those.
Those are activities, more like activities?
Yeah, like activities, yeah.
That's not real goal. Is that
well,
what you say?
Well, no, they're important,
Ah.
but they have their place.
Okay.
And it's not about going tactics and then plans based on those tactics and then strategies. It's about working top down,
Okay.
right? So what is the vision? What are some strategies that you can use to accomplish that vision? What are the plans? It's kind of more like the how-to, yeah? Getting into the how to do it. And then the tactics might be even smaller than that. So the tactics might be the day-to-day stuff. So, I mean, you can break it down like a strategy could be 10 years. It could be 10 days, right? But then breaking it down based on that, you can't say a plan is like 3 months and a strategy is 10 years. It depends on what you're strategizing about, right? We could have a strategy about what we need to do over the next 3 months, you know, to grow from maybe, 30 subscribers to 1,000, yeah? And what is the strategy to get there? And then we might have different plans within there, whether it's about marketing on Facebook or marketing through, our networks, or, creating certain types of videos in there. And then getting into the tactics, like what are the specific things that we need to be doing within these videos, like you adding the little, special effects in the editing and all of that.
Which is there.
Those are the tactics, right? So they're all an important part, but it's important to, I think, get the order right, because working from small to big, it's like that analogy of the jar, you know that one, where if you fill it with sand first, then you can't fit the bigger rocks, and then the bigger rocks don't fit in. But if you put the big rocks in first, right, that's like your vision. What is your biggest rock that you want to fit in the jar? And then you put in the strategies all around it, the kind of smaller rocks, then you put in the smaller rocks, and then you fit in the sand, right? But if you put in the sand first, which are just the tactics, and you end up running around like a headless chicken just doing stuff all day, then you're not going to go anywhere, right? It's not going to end up doing anything that's effective, right? And so it's more about effectiveness than efficiency. It's not about just doing. It's about, well, why are you doing that? What's the purpose of doing that?
This is perfect.
Burped, yeah.
Okay, so Daddy said so much. So if I already know how, like, my bigger picture, how do I make a good strategy?
Once you know your picture, what's clear, you want to think about what is it specifically about that goal that needs to be done, right? So there's specific parts of it that need to be accomplished for it to get there. So each goal is going to be, depends on the goal. But based on that goal, you can come up with like a range of different possibilities. So it's kind of like brainstorming at first.
Can we have an example?
Yeah.
Give me an example.
So let me just explain the process first. So we can think of what we call convergent and divergent, right? Sorry, divergent and convergent thinking. So divergent means basically you come up with lots of ideas. It's like a brainstorm. Like these are all the different possibilities of what might work. And then you can do a bit of research based on what has worked for people in the past, if someone has done something similar, things that you've done in the past that may or may not have worked. And then you can start to sort of decide, okay, some of those may not work, maybe they won't work very well. Maybe you start, and that's the convergent, coming back in towards what is the strategy that we're going to use. And part of this process that is not often used when it comes to a business context, but I think when it comes to life, and I think even in business, but it's not often used, it comes down to the heart also. Because when you've got a few different options and you're not exactly sure which one, and you sort of eliminated the ones that are very unlikely to work, what often works best is the one that feels right. And this is when we can get into intuition and how intuition actually works. And I don't need to get into the science of all that, but it's one of the things that, I think in our modern society, people don't really listen to as much, or they've sort of lost their trust in intuition, and they get down into like the analysis of what do the numbers say, right? And
I feel like this is so deep. This is so deep. I don't know if you guys followed or not. Keep continuing.
This is supposed to be a deep conversation, right?
It is.
You're going to interpret from me afterwards.
I'm looking the star in your eyes now.
So one of the things that's important comes down to what feels right. And part of that is knowing how to feel into something, how to listen to your intuition, how to listen to your heart.
There's so many things we need to do.
We can do a separate video on each of these different things, right? But when it comes to deciding on a strategy, I would say that actually is probably the most important thing, right? You can brainstorm lots of different strategies, and that's great. That sort of creative thinking.
Is there a formula to come out a strategy? Is there a formula to say, I'm going to make a strategy for A. How do I do it? So will be list of things and choose the things you want to do.
So,
and
okay, to break it down into what I just said, okay, but in slightly maybe faster and quicker terms. So strategy is, or the process to create a strategy, brainstorm possibilities. You can even do a bit of research. So maybe even before you brainstorm, you can do research. Although I recommend brainstorming first and then doing your research, because when you do research, then you start to already converge, right? You're already starting to eliminate possibilities. So there's a certain type of research which is finding new possibilities, and there's a certain type of research which is finding what works, right? So the brainstorming process, coming up with options, all the different options, and then eliminating the ones that don't work, and then coming to a few that you think those seem like decent strategies. And then I think the best way to decide what is the best strategy comes down to heart, comes down to intuition. What feels right.
First is, my mind is very different than your mind. My mind is, first is brainstorm. Second is to do research.
Well, you could do research before you brainstorm, but it's a different kind of research.
Well, let's just
keep it simple.
Yes, keep it simple.
Okay, brainstorm,
Third
research.
Is narrow it down.
Mm-hmm.
4 is choose the one you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you make a strategy of thing 1, right?
Thing 1 and thing 2.
Yeah.
And one of the things about, and why I say intuition, is because our intuition can hold a lot more sort of information that we think it can. And we often think of our logical mind as being the smart mind, but when it comes to making important decisions, our intuition is able to hold a lot of different possibilities and to feel into the right one. And so different people listen to their intuition in different ways. Some people feel like a gut feeling, some people feel it in their heart, some people just sort of, I know this is right. And so it's about feeling into what is the way that you...
I know this is right.
Yeah. What is the way that your intuition tells you?
Yeah.
Right. And once you know that, I mean, learning that is also a process, right? But once you know that, then once you've sort of narrowed it down to a few possibilities, you just feel into and you go with it.
I think what Daddy want to say is strategy is kind of very logic things, but when you're making strategy, you also need to listen to your heart.
Both.
Daddy,
Both.
Mommy always have very good ability to just make it simple. Make it people who is not really understand what he's talking too deep, and then make it in Chinese we call it 深入简出. Okay.
It's funny. I'm not a huge fan of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step processes.
Yeah. I am.
I know. And I think they are useful and important. And I like learning new ones. However, and I guess this is the way my mind works, I like doing things organically. I like sort of seeing the context that I'm in, you know, and with each coaching session, and maybe this is different for different coaches, right? But the way that I coach is, I don't have a 1, 2, 3, 4 step process. And a lot of coaches do. Like when you learn how to coach, different people are trained in different ways, and they might have like, these are the 5 things that I do with my clients.
I think Daddy has a very unique way to do it. Everybody has a unique way. For me is like because I do those Photoshop things, like if I watch a video who tell me how to make something, and then he's telling me the step by step, I cannot jump any of those steps. I have to do step by step, and then to achieve that goal. So I think the step is important. After like 2 or 3 seconds, 2 or 3 minutes, I just start lost. I start like, you have so many stars in your eyes. It's just maybe you just talk too much and I cannot follow up because you're doing it organically, and my mind is not in that way. So I don't know where to put it. I don't know which order I put it. Like otherwise I can put in, oh, number 1. Okay, I use my mind to, oh, number 1 that, oh, number 2 that. But then when you start talking a lot, and then it's like, oh, which point is that? Is that point 1 or point 2 or point 3?
See, this is another thing, is different the way that we do things,
Yeah.
right? Like, as a coach, I would prefer not give you a 3-step process. I would prefer give you a perspective and let you come up with your own 3-step process, because then you own it, right? If it's my 3-step process, you can sort of follow my 3-step process, but it's not going to be yours. So if I can sort of explain to you a perspective, and then you start to think, yeah, that's interesting. That's something I haven't thought about before. Oh yeah, I knew a little bit of that, but that's something else. That's something extra. Okay, now I'm going to do it like this, or I'm going to add this extra thing. I think that it's a different idea, right?
Yeah,
I don't want to give you a process. I don't think that's useful. I think that if I can give you a certain perspective and then you come up with your own process, then you own that and you run with that.
I think what Daddy wants to say is, if you learn a specific skill, you probably need a 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to achieve that skill, like Photoshop, right? But if in your life there's so many decisions, Daddy won't tell you a only step to go there, because there's so many ways, and then each person have different ways.
There's an infinite number. So one of the things I'd like to share is that there's no right answers. There are different answers. And so my answer to this question is going to be different from someone else's answer to this question. And it's about, what can you take from this that makes sense to you, that you will use? So out of all that we've talked about, if there's even only just one thing that you're like, hey, yeah, that's interesting, or that was a good idea, then run with that, use that, practice that, get good at that. That can make all the difference. It's not about taking this set system that exists and using that system.
Yeah.
That's one way of doing it, right?
Yeah, I think what Daddy's perspective is coming from life decision. If you want to learn a Photoshop, don't do something like that.
This is interesting because mommy is a technical person, right?
Yeah.
She's in our family. She's the one who like fixes everything, or whenever there's like a technical problem, she figures it out. And I think that comes down to having a very good ability to step by step go through things in a very sort of logical way.
Yeah, that's also
right?
a very good strength. Very, very good strength.
This is true.
So if you are good at that, keep being good at that, and then learn
out, right?
Well-
like if it's Photoshop, right? Like exactly. Like I'm not saying learn how to be better at Photoshop by following your heart, right? And it doesn't work like that, right? I'm talking about a vision, right? And whether it's a vision for a business or a vision for your life, that's about the heart, right? There are some things that are better to use your logical mind to decide on, right? And that's like, if you're sending a rocket into space, don't listen to your heart about what numbers go into the formula, right?
Exactly.
Don't, because the rocket will blow up, right? And you won't even be able to build the rocket in the first place. But if you're talking about how do you create a life for yourself where you're going to be happy 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How do you create a family that's going to be full of love? How do you create a business that makes a difference in the world? That's not about step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's about what feels right in here and how can I make that out into reality. Love you guys. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, hit that bell button so you get notified when we have new videos. And also, please comment, any comment, whatever comes into your mind. We'd love to hear it. And
That's the formula. Yeah.
thank you very much.
Cool.
And thank you, lovely. Love you.
Me too.
See you next time, guys.
I think that's very good.